right, good morning, everybody. It looks like it's slowed down the Zoom letting people in, so I'm going to jump in and get started. My name is Karen DeRua. I'm a counselor here at Alzheimer Group. And welcome to AGI's annual education conference. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, Alzheimer Group is a charitable organization that supports families and individuals living with dementia. Our services include activities for people living with dementia, individual and family counseling, support groups, and educational courses. Events such as this one are made possible by the generosity of the Lasner Learning Center. Today, we're very much honored to have Claire Craig and Patricia Belchior to present on the topic, Community, Connectivity, Conversation, How to Live Well Through the Dementia Journey. Please note that while the chat feature is unavailable, there's a Q&A space for you to write your questions, and we encourage you to do so. You're welcome to type your questions at any time, and we'll address them after the presentation. Claire Craig is a professor of design and creative practice in health and co-director of the Lab for Living in the UK. Her research focuses on the role of design in promoting quality of life and well-being, particularly in the context of people experiencing major life transitions. She is particularly interested in the role of the arts and creative practice in offering individuals living with dementia and their families an outlet for self-expression and valued meaningful activity. Claire is a qualified occupational therapist. She has written a number of books in relation to her work, including Meaningful Making, Journeying Through Dementia, Exploring the Self Through Photography, and Creativity and Communication. Patricia Belchior is an associate professor at the School of Physical and Occupational Therapy at McGill University and a researcher at the Centre de Recherche de l'Institut Universitaire de Gériatrie de Montréal, the CRIUGM. Her current research work focuses on community-based interventions for older adults living with dementia and family members to promote life with meaning. So thank you very much for being here. I'm going to pass the floor over to you, and I'm going to disappear myself from the camera.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm just going to share some slides, kind of hoping that the technology is going to work, and let's have a go here. Fantastic. Thank you so much for the introduction this morning. That was absolutely wonderful. Brilliant. Okay then, so I think we're looking good here. Right. Hopefully you can all see that and it looks okay. Fantastic. So as Karen kindly said, thank you so much for inviting me to speak here today. And my name is Professor Claire Craig. I'm absolutely thrilled. It's wonderful to be here with you. So today I hope to share with you a community programme called Journeying Through Dementia that you can hopefully see on the right hand side of your screen, that focuses on helping people living with dementia to keep connected to the things that they love doing and that bring meaning and purpose. I'm going to say a little bit about how we develop some of the work in partnership with people, and then just share some of what people with dementia have told us about being part of the programme. And then towards the end, I'm going to kind of pass the baton ultimately over to my lovely colleague, Patricia, who's going to say a little bit of something about sharing the work here in Quebec. Okay, so a little bit about me. As you've probably gathered from my accent, I'm from the United Kingdom. I'm a researcher, and I'm a co-director of a research group called Lab for Living at Sheffield Hallam University, which is quite a big university, about 35,000 students. We're based in Sheffield, which is roughly in the middle of England, in South Yorkshire. So you can see like right in the middle of the UK. And as Karen said, I'm an occupational therapist. So for the last 30 years, I've worked as an occupational therapist with and alongside people living with dementia. I suppose at the heart of everything that I do is this belief that life takes on meaning kind of in the minute by minute reality through which we experience our ability to achieve ordinary things. At the heart of everything that we do is meaning and purpose. And when meaning and purpose work together, we experience quality of life. And research from all over the world, from absolutely all over the world, tells us at the core of well-being, is a sense of connectivity, And, it's about being able to do the things that we love doing with the people that we love doing them with for as long as we possibly can. And as I say, research from all over the world, no matter kind of which subject area, tells us that that is the kind of secret to well-being and quality of life. So when I was working as an occupational therapist in practice with people living with dementia in hospitals, community settings, care environments, I often wondered why we didn't see people at a much earlier point in their dementia journey, when we could have shared more knowledge and some techniques and skills that could really help people to make adjustments to activities that they were doing or to the environments where they were living to really maximize that ability to connect and to really kind of continue to kind of support that engagement. And for me as an occupational therapist, I was often really frustrated because the point that I often work with people was at a point of crisis rather than working with people at a much, much earlier time. But this often puzzled me. And I suppose these thoughts were things, listening and hearing the experiences of the individuals that I was working with were the things that really sowed the seeds for the programme, the Journey Through Dementia programme, that I'm really about to kind of share and talk a little bit about with you. So back in 2006 was really where my journey with this notion of working with people at a much earlier point in their dementia journey began. And here in the United Kingdom, I was helped by a number of different things. So first of all, I was really fortunate to be kind of living at a time where there was a much broader realization of what people with dementia had to offer, and a real rethinking of who people living with dementia were. And so the focus in the United Kingdom was really much, much more on thinking about early diagnosis. What happens if we can really help to diagnose dementia at a much earlier point and enable people to be given access to different types of provision? There was a kind of a growing body of research into something called self-management. So self-management was a notion, an idea that a way to equip people living with all sorts of long-term conditions with the skills to better manage their condition. So that kind of really kind of chimed with me. And then I guess for me, the third and the probably the most important thing was a growing voice of people living with dementia who were saying, actually, we want something more than what we have. We want something more than what we have. And that kind of body of work and that body of work was really happening all over the globe. And so we had examples of that. I don't know if people have heard of Christine Bryden. So Christine Bryden had worked for the Australian government, and I think she was diagnosed with dementia probably in her late 40s. And obviously for Christine, her immediate reaction is to want to find out what was available for her. But she found that actually the majority of information and the majority of support was geared really at family members and carers. And there was very, very little at that time for people actually living with dementia, living with the condition. in the United Kingdom, I was really fortunate to be connected with the amazing James McKillop and a group called the Scottish Dementia Working Group. Now, the Scottish Dementia Working Group were really interesting. They were a group of people who were living with all living with dementia. And they were supporting each other. They were sharing techniques and skills, but they were also speaking to government and to policy. They were saying things like, well, actually, there are things that we could do and that could be done differently. And I met James McKillop because when James was originally diagnosed with dementia, again in his late 50s, he was offered 2 hours of help or support to develop a new skill in whatever he wanted to do. It was offered through a community organisation. And James decided that he'd like to learn how to take photographs. He'd never taken photographs before, but he felt it was something that he would like to learn how to do. And he found in taking photographs, in using his camera, he could express, not only take really interesting images, but he could express himself through those images in a way that kind of went beyond the words that he had to talk about what was happening for him. And it opened up an entirely new avenue of opportunity for him. And he published his first book called Opening Shutters, Opening Minds. And in that book, he said, being told that I had dementia was like a door reopening after a difficult time in my life. New challenges, new opportunities. I want people to understand that dementia is not an end. It's a new beginning where you do things differently. While some things change forever, there's still a lot that you can do. And I was really inspired by James, and he introduced me to his colleagues in the Scottish Dementia Working Group. And I was really inspired by the Scottish Dementia Working Group and what they were achieving. So they were meeting regularly, they were supporting each other. And then as people's memories became worse, other people stepped up and everybody continued to be involved. And the group were just extraordinary in what they were doing and what they were achieving. They were producing information for other people with dementia. They were supporting other people with dementia. And because they had that knowledge and understanding, they were really well positioned to do that. So I had these three things. So I had these three elements. So I had the policy context, lots of kind of really interesting policy talking about early diagnosis. Then there was this kind of body of research talking about the value of this approach called self-management, giving people the tools and skills to better understand and to manage their condition. And then importantly, the voice of people with dementia. So the final link in this kind of puzzle, if you like, was my own research with older people on a program that was called Lifestyle Matters. So I was successful in winning some funding with my occupational therapy colleague, Professor Gail Mountain. And together and in partnership with older people, we developed a community-based programme for older people going through the major life transitions that happen when you start to age, which I'm experiencing at the moment. So what the programme did, it was based on a menu of topics that individuals could choose from. So meet at a meeting for 2 hours a week over an 8 to 10 week period. So older people came together, and through a menu of topics, they could choose what they wanted to look at. And this was facilitated by an occupational therapist. And through that process, with lots of peer support, individuals started to work out techniques and approaches to enable participants to kind of gain the most out of what they were doing in life and to continue to keep connected to the things that they love doing for as long as they could do them for. And there was something that was really empowering about that. It was so successful, that work that we did in the United Kingdom, that it found its way into the National Institute of Clinical Health Excellence Guidelines as best practice. So we had here a community-based group intervention, this particular one aimed at older people, but it was all about empowering and giving people techniques to navigate the kind of major transitions that happen as you grow older. So we had a really brilliant program. And the question I suppose Gail Mountain and myself had was, could we then take these ideas, this program, and could we adapt that for people living with dementia? Would people with dementia want something like that? And if so, what would it look like? So I had this amazing, amazing job. And my role was to go up and down the country, talking to and really hearing the voice of people who've been recently diagnosed with dementia, to really understand what people would have liked to happen, what people would find valuable, what people would find helpful. So talking to people living with dementia and their families about what would make a difference. And whether a program, a bit like one that developed that was based on, inspired by the work of Jean Jackson, Florence Clark around lifestyle redesign, Lifestyle Matters program that we'd run in the community, whether people living with dementia would like a program like that, but that was aimed at helping individuals to live well with dementia, to live well with the condition. Okay, so that was my job. It was the best job I've ever had in my career, just going up and down the country in the United Kingdom, talking to people to find out what a program could potentially be or look like. And so what did people tell me? So did people want a program of this nature? Absolutely, yes, they did. People said, yes, we don't just want to sit, we want action. We want to learn techniques, we want to learn skills, we want to understand more about what we can do. We have this diagnosis, but what next? So we said to people, what would this program include? And people said, actually, we'd like to learn how to do the things that I enjoy. How do I keep doing these things? How can I change the way that I'm doing things so I can keep connected to these? I don't just want to sit around talking about dementia all the time because it's depressing. Somebody else said, actually, give the person with dementia some hope to cling on to, show them that dementia makes you change your life, but you can still be happy and productive. That message came through time and time again. Yes, we have to make adaptations, but actually, we can still do the things that we love doing. You know, show us how to do that. Give people some hope. Really, really important. Incredibly, individuals didn't just tell us what the program should comprise of. They told us about how we should run it. So, for example, from the Scottish Dementia Working Group, people said, we run our meetings with an informal session, tea, coffee, biscuits, half an hour before starting. But we don't plan to go on longer than an hour. People can stretch their legs, go outside for a smoke. But if you go on too long, you lose the smokers. Absolutely fantastic. So people with dementia gave us so much in terms of what was important, gave us really, really important pointers, you know, really important pointers. And this slide has got some of the things that people said. Yeah, dementia is not a major part of your life, it's a part of it. I plan ahead and wake up thinking things I've arranged to do that day. People talked about the importance of keeping up with friends, family, books, films, church, whatever, to give people memories, but also thinking about creating new ones. You know, really thinking about the things that bring meaning, you know, help us to achieve our full potential. So I collected a whole body of knowledge, a whole body of understanding of the things that people wanted from a program. So all of the things that people told me, I listened to, and I just kind of captured what people had said. And from that, I created the first kind of iteration, the first version of a resource that participants, that people called Journeying Through Dementia, because actually it's a journey. Things change and move, and you adapt and develop as much as you do through life. And this was kind of what came from that. So as I said, the Journeying Through Dementia programme, and I'll say a little bit more about it in a second, comprise of a series of different topics and themes that people coming together with dementia, so people coming together in the community, people living with dementia, came together to explore, to share knowledge and understanding, to share techniques, and the groups facilitated by occupational therapists. So that was the Journey Through Dementia programme, and connected to that a whole range of different materials and resources to support the facilitation of that programme. So this is back in 2006 and 7, which is kind of quite a few years ago. And of course, it underwent, for the first few years, a number of iterations. So we tested it out. People with dementia very, very generously, and their family members very generously took part in a whole range of different pilots with us, feeding back so we could completely continue to kind of tweak and change bits based on what people were telling us. But these were some of the things that people told us who were taking part in the programme. So people told us what had made a difference. So people said, actually, what people had really enjoyed was that they'd been able to learn things about what I can do to help myself. An enormous part of it all was that building confidence. People said, I've got confidence. It's confidence that's been holding me back. You know, by the time I've had a diagnosis of dementia, I've lost so much of my confidence. But what the programme's done is it's given me a huge amount of confidence. And that's made a massive, massive difference. And this is a really, that first quote, you know, what you've done for me has got me back to the top. You know, what we've been doing here and saying and thinking about, it's done me so good. If you see me not too far back off my food, you know, but coming here is a thing that's got me back to the top. That notion of being with like-minded people, finding ways to kind of overcome some of the challenges that individuals were facing, and guided and supported by the occupational therapist in doing that. You know, you're telling me things that could alter my life. You know, having a laugh. People love the social connectivity that the group brought for them, that ability to come together and to engage together. And, you know, and again, you know, somebody said, you need a medal and a raise. I'd love to buy you a gold ring. If I were a money woman, I'd see you right. People really appreciate it. And we're just so kind of overwhelmed and, you know, feeling that it had just made such a big difference to individuals. And that was kind of really, you know, from that moment, I knew that this programme, we needed to look more at it, and we needed to continue to test it and to develop it, and to really understand more about some of the mechanisms that were at work within it. So what was the programme made up of? So what was the programme made up of? So the programme, very simply, comprises of, you know, as I say, it's a series of topics, but all those topics really link to the fact that there's a recognition that there's a relationship between the activities or the occupations, the day-to-day things that we take part in, and our health and our well-being. And driving the whole aim of the programme is to promote continued engagement in meaningful activity. And that's about equipping people at the beginning of their dementia journey and their families with the knowledge, skills and understanding of ways to continue to do the things that people enjoy for as long as possible. And that might be through adapting the activity or the environment in which those activities take place. So people living with dementia attend a 2-hour weekly group programme held in the community. And based on the feedback from people living with dementia, family members attend in the first session, a midway session and an end session. People with dementia said, actually, it's really helpful for us just to be able to be together, to talk about the things without worrying our family or being able to feel that you know, that we can't share things. You know, we really care about the people that we live with. We really care about them. But it's just also just nice to be able to talk about what some of the things that are happening that we might not be able to talk about so easily, or build confidence in learning how to talk about those things. So people with dementia attend a 2-hour weekly group session that's held in the community. And the support for family members, you know, as I say, the first week, the middle week, and the end session. But equally, you know, we kind of meet for coffee. It's a really lovely kind of part of that whole thing. The group sessions are complemented by a, a couple of individual visits from the occupational therapist. And that's about helping people to focus on and understand what individual goals people want to achieve. What is it that individuals want to kind of gain from the programme? And how is the group helping people to achieve that, to kind of connect with those really important goals? And then people in the group choose the topics that they want to explore. So rather than being expected to fit into a group members shape the group and the content. And that means it's really personalised. It's really personalised. And importantly, it's incredibly relevant for people. Yeah, everything has meaning. As is often the way, you know, when you hear and really work alongside people with dementia who are experts about their condition, what you also learn, and then when you look at the literature and what the literature tells you, all of the topics that individuals identified in the work that I did were absolutely mirrored in the broader research, you know, absolutely mirrored in the broader research. So really kind of clearly underpinned by a much broader evidence base as well. So whilst there's a really lovely menu of topics that group members can choose from, which ensures that the group is customised and personalised to meet the needs of group members, there's also a familiar structure in place. So there's a kind of sense of kind of rhythm, which again, we all know for all of us is important. So that's the sharing of session aims, a lovely introductory activity that people share together, topics for discussion and sharing, and then group activities. Things to test out and try, techniques to build, to learn, to understand, you know, really lovely things to actually do, really lovely things to actually do. And because we understand it's not just about talking about these things in one place, you know, it's also about how those things are enacted in the community and how people can continue to be connected to the community. There are a series of out-of-venue visits to build confidence. And as I say, it's all about supporting community connectedness, you know, building confidence and helping people to kind of generalize and support those skills. And that's using a whole range of amazing community resources that when I came to visit Montreal, that I could see, and again, working brilliantly with, you know, Karen and Marivic, you know, some of the amazing resources that are available. And then on top of that, as I said, there are some individual sessions which really focus on identifying individuals' aims, goals, hopes, aspirations, to help people to work towards those. So did a huge amount of work developing the materials, the content with people living with dementia. And I can take no credit for any of the programme itself, because that all came from the communities that I work with, people living with dementia who were told me what needed to be there, as I say, completely corresponding with the broader evidence base, but absolutely all I did was to capture these amazing conversations that people living with dementia and their families so generously shared with me. So that was incredible. That was absolutely wonderful. But of course, then I had to develop materials that supported the delivery, because, you know, everybody works in really busy environments and settings, and we wanted to develop materials that communicated value and how much people were valued. So the next bit of my journey with this work was working with some incredible practitioners, occupational therapists, community organisations in developing the materials. And again, I've got a few slides just showing some of the amazing groups that I worked with along this way, you know, modifying, changing the actual materials that were contained within the programme based on lots and lots of feedback and people testing and trying and telling me what was working and what wasn't working. So it was a huge amount of work. And again, just so many thanks to everybody who was part of that. And they've been such a brilliant group of people that I've managed to work with. I feel really connected to everybody as well. It's been absolutely wonderful. So that was such a huge part of this whole process. So the work has been rigorously researched and been rigorously tested, which is wonderful. But what I thought I would do in the time that we've got together is just to kind of share a couple of examples of some of the things that people have told us and what it's been meant to participate and be part of the programme. Okay, so I thought I'd just have a few examples. So yes, the work's been rigorously tested. It's now part of Scottish policy for dementia. It sits with the connecting support policy documents, which is again a really core part of you know, the way that services in Scotland certainly are shaped, and a similar thing in Wales. But if I just take some of the work that's been happening up in Scotland, and I thought I'd focus on a place just outside Glasgow, in one of the sites, which I think they're on their maybe 21st, 22nd group now, and they have waiting lists. So it takes this particular group takes part in an amazing community venue, which is a really it's an amazing place with a community garden, a cafe, all sorts of other events are happening in there. Within after each session, each of the sessions that happen, people in the group, people living with dementia, give feedback about something that they've enjoyed, something that they found useful, something that they would change, something that they'd remember. And these are just some of the quotes from just one session that I attended recently. So these are just quotes from just one session. And again, you can just see the kind of links, the kind of, you know, the importance of this connectivity. It's having the company, it lifts you. You know, I've loved every minute of it. You know, being out with people, speaking about technology, communicating more. One thing I remember, tell my girls it was lovely to have met you and you will be here each week. That had a laugh. I feel free, I can talk, get it off my mind and then feel better. Yeah, it makes you feel happy. Gets my mind moving. Again, you know, it's a blessing when I got to attend the group. It's good to be with people, talk, support, excellent information. I've learned things I didn't know that can help me with my memory. Yeah, I've met others. I don't feel that I'm alone. The connectivity. And that is not just from people living with dementia who share this, but also from family members. You know, really lovely feedback. It's a really nice place to visit. You know, reserve our table. It becomes an event. My husband's much brighter, looks forward to going each week. You know, the value of what that means. And in this particular area, in every single group that they delivered, it's had 100%. There's a really simple post-diagnostic, single quality question. 100% of people have found it helpful. And again, we've got lots and lots of data that is owned by the hospitals and the trusts, which show it's a positive impact on quality of life. Yeah, so there's lots of research that's happened behind the scenes, but the important thing is what people with dementia and their family members tell us. Yeah, 100% people found it helpful. And it's not just individuals who found it helpful, but it's been recognised by it's the programme is award-winning. And again, you know, I can take no credit for it. This is about the people living with dementia and the facilitators across Scotland and Wales. But again, the programme has won multiple awards for the impact that it's having on individuals who've attended it. So it's been a, you know, such a kind of privilege and a pleasure to see that. And this was a recent event that we held, which was a kind of yet another celebration, which is, yeah, amazing. So I said at the beginning, I was going to talk about kind of that we themed is thinking about connectivity and conversation and about the importance of that. And I think for me, I'm just going to kind of end now. But I think for me, this quote just sums up the kind of just the value of the notion of offering of the program, but also kind of what happens when people come together. I felt very lonely. I felt as though I could do nothing. By coming here and seeing and hearing what other people do, it's helped me, and I think I've helped others as well. So it's not just about the connectivity that arises when people come and receive something, but it's the amazing contribution that people living with dementia and their families make in that reciprocity in giving something back to others. And for me, I think the take home is the kind of just that value and the importance of our ability to keep connected and to keep working together, and the amazing things that can come when that happens. And that might happen at individual level, in family level, in community level, in national level, or in international level. And as I say, it's been such a privilege for me to come. I came last year and visited Montreal. I met such amazing people here. And Patricia, Maravik, Karen, just incredible people. And so it's a real pleasure to come and now connect with you. And in a few moments, I'm going to hand over to Patricia, who is going to talk a little bit about building on that level of connectivity and sharing the kind of next plans in terms of what might happen with the programme, and the potential to build even broader connectivity. Okay, so thank you very much. And I hope that was all right and I'm not overrun. Fantastic. So I think I'm going to hand over now. Is that right, to Patricia?
Yes. Thank you very much, Claire, for the presentation. Thank you, Karen and Maravik, for doing this this conference. I'm very happy to be here sharing this presentation with Claire. And this is, I hope the slides are working. So this is a program, and this is a project that has been like in the making for about 2 years. When I met Claire, the UK, and this is something that I really enjoy. These are the thoughts and that I was having about implementing this program, or an occupational based program here in Quebec. So I was very happy when I met Claire. I was, she was here then a year ago to give a presentation in the program, and I think little by little we've been started building this program, and now it's happening. So what I'd like to very briefly share with you, it's what we are doing here in Quebec, in order to bring this program here. So I'd like to introduce to the team here that we've been working on this program. So we have, Claire, and also some colleagues, Melanie Levasseur, Nathalie Bier, Joanne Filiatro. We are all occupational therapists, and that we are very excited to adapt. So basically, what we'd like to do is to bring this program and adapt to Quebec. We also have Kemi, the occupational therapy that's going to be delivering this program here. And also Mena, who is a PhD student, and also she's going to be doing some of the individual interviews for the program. So before I started this program, I also want to go, into the literature review just to see what, when we're talking with older adults living with dementia and family members, what would they like to have in a program like this? What would be, their needs? And this is nothing, very new from what Claire has already presented, and it seems, these needs are a bit universal. So through some literature review and also with some interviews with individuals here in Montreal, we have found, listening to them, that what they need is from support from family and friends for continuation of social roles, and I think it's really what Claire has been talking about, continuing making connections, building new relationships, maintaining relationships, but also talking about things that not only talk about dementia, but it's really having this connectivity in general. Continue to engagement with day-to-day activities, either participating to some programs, doing leisure hobbies or volunteer work. One thing that we hear a lot, it's, in the literature review and also, through interviews and also with personal communication, is really this, this need to understand what dementia is, because when somebody gets to the doctor, what I hear is that, we got this diagnosis and we are told that, we're going to see you back in about a couple of years or so, but we did not know what dementia was really, what it was, what to expect about dementia, what was the cause, what were the risks. So really this general understanding about dementia, and also, to learn something that's not so negative, because sometimes we tend to really talk just about, the losses and the challenge that we have with dementia, but we also want to understand, that's what we hear about, more positive. So what can we still do? How we can, cope with all these changes that that are happening. So these were, some of the needs, like what people would like to do, and this is what all the things that can be addressed in this program, as Claire, she has also shared with you. So then that's what we would like to bring this program here. And what we are doing now is what we call a feasibility study with some older adults living with dementia and family members, because we have, a lot of materials, and we'd like to know, if people here in Quebec, they would like to do this program, they'd like us, to implement this program in a larger scale, if it works here, and also the material. Are there things that we need to change? Are there things that we need to adapt? For now, we are doing this feasibility study in English because the whole material is in English. But then after we do this adaptation, we are going to translate to French, so we can do it in a larger scale. So this program, it really complements already existing programs. So we have wonderful programs, in the community. We have, for example, arts, music-based programs, respite. We have education, a lot of activities groups. So this program, it's one more tools, because when we think about the needs, when we think about the journey and the experience that people have, it's very different. So there is not, I think, one size fits all. There is, really, this complex of, resources and tools. So the idea is that the journey through dementia, it will be an additional tool, it will be an additional resource for people. So this is for individuals, as Claire has mentioned, that has been recently diagnosed. So kind of a post-diagnosed group. A lot of the groups and programs that exist, it's usually for individuals at a later stages of the disease. So this is one of the characteristics of this program, that it's really like in the beginning of this journey, really to provide, some tools and provide some resources that can, support in this journey. So really to continue participating to the day-to-day activities that bring meaning and joy. So the components of this program, as Claire has, mentioned. So for this study that we are doing here, this feasibility study, there is an individual component too. So the occupational therapist that's going to their homes, really to try to understand, how this program can support the person, how we can tailor, but also in these interviews, in these, these visits, what we'd like to hear is there anything that needs to be adapted? Do you think this program would fit here? How maybe we can tailor this program to be more meaningful here in Quebec? And then we have, the group. So the work on themes that the group we're gonna, identify as important. For this feasibility study, so it's a small study we're gonna do at the CRIUGM, which is the geriatric center at Chamin Queen Mary. But after we do this adaptation, and if we say let's move forward, so the goal is really to be implementing this program in the community base, like Alzheimer's group, and so on. So this program is going to be for 8 weeks. So there is going to be one meeting per week. In each meeting, we're going to last about 2 hours, where we all also, as Claire has mentioned, we're going to have 30 minutes of snacks, light lunch, and then we're going to have, the program that's going to be delivered. So here are some, examples of topics that can be discussed during those meetings. And these are the topics that, we have into this program. So Claire has, showed we have a menu of topics that we can address into this program. We can also build, other topics if during the interviews, if during the groups, we think that, there are other topics that we haven't thought about, other issues that we need to discuss. So also, we're also going to address it. So an example of things that we can be talking about is adapting the physical environment. So we know that with dementia, there are some, changes in cognition, memory, attention, perceptual changes. So just thinking about how the physical environment might be adapted to really support continuation of activities during this journey. Another example is like transportation. We can be talking about for example, driving. For a lot of individuals, at some point, they might need to stop driving, which is a very important, activity. So then we can start thinking maybe about strategies and resources to support transportation, how it impacts day-to-day activities, and so on. We can be talking about technology, so how technology can support day-to-day activities. And it can be different things. It can be just using, the computer or the phone to play some games. It can be technology to help medication management, so you remember to be taking your medications, and so on. And also maintaining community connectedness, because this is, a main, theme. And what is we find that it's very important for individuals. So really thinking about the resources that we have in the community, but not just, educating about these resources, but also brainstorming about maybe potential challenges, potential barriers that we might face in accessing these resources, right? For example, transportation is one of them, because we do have a lot of programs, but sometimes we hear that individuals, we cannot get into this program. So really thinking about strategies and resources that can be used to really maintain this community connectedness even after the program ends. So I'd like just briefly to thank the funding organizations for this program. We do, if anyone is interested, we do have few, spots available for the program. So we'll be starting very, very soon. And if you have any questions, you can contact, at AGI or myself. So this was a very brief, introduction about what we've been doing here. So really to bring this exciting program. So in the team, we are all very excited to bring this program to Quebec. And I really hope that in the near future, I'm going to have more updates for you about that. So I think I hand back to Karen now.
Sorry, I'm just working on turning myself back on here. There we go. All right. So we have a little bit of time at this point in the morning to answer some questions. In the afternoon, we're going to talk a little bit more about what the situation is in terms of finding these resources in the community right now and trying to give everybody a bit of a roadmap to meeting those needs before we have wide access to a program like this. But before that, I wanted to open the floor in the Q&A. If you have any questions about the program that Patricia and Claire have spoken about so far, I encourage you to ask those questions now. While we're waiting for people to have a moment to type in their questions, I have a question. I was wondering, Claire, could we go back to that slide where you have all of the different categories of topics that you discuss? Because I'd be interested in hearing a little bit more about those areas of focus that have come out in your research as the really appropriate areas that people who have been recently diagnosed with dementia really want to focus on.
Yeah, definitely. Do you want me to share? Oh, do you want me to share the slide, Karen? Is that helpful?
Yeah, is
People
that
going to
okay?
see that? Yeah, of
Thank
course I
you.
can.
Yeah. I think
Definitely. Yeah.
I think it's really interesting that, I often say in the work that we do here at AGI, there's no point that's too early to come to us, because the earlier people come to us, the more we can help people learn to cope with their diagnosis and help their families learn to cope with the diagnosis. And so I find it
Absolutely.
really interesting to have a sort of comprehensive list of different ways that we can do that.
Yeah.
We do have one question here. What are the major differences between this program and what AGI provides in their support groups? I don't know if you would like me to speak to the answer to that, just because I think I know more about what we do in AGI support groups. So one major difference, I assume this is somebody who's asking about our spousal support groups and support groups for caregivers. One of the major differences between that and our support group programs here at AGI, our support groups are for care partners, family members of people who have been diagnosed. This is a program that provides support directly to the person living with dementia. We do that in our activity center, and we do have some earlier stage groups, but this is a shorter term. Our groups are ongoing. This is a shorter term program specifically directed towards people who are recently diagnosed, with the goal of teaching coping skills and helping with mental health in that early stage, in hopes that it sets the foundation for everything that comes. So AGI is very much implicated in the everything that comes. This is a very structured, organized way of thinking about that first step. I hope that answers the question. I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add to that, Claire or Patricia?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really great question. I think you've articulated that beautifully, and I would also say that the two go together really well, because there will be people who will come to the Journey Through Dementia program who don't know about the resources and the amazing things that happen at in your organisation, AGI, but actually through this program they will very much link to that, and so that's the other kind of strength of it, because it offers that. So there's suddenly a kind of a route in where people can actually understand and make the most of the resources that are there, and understand what is available for people as well. So I think that it definitely, they sit
my
really well
dream for a
together.
program like this would be that everybody diagnosed gets moved into a program like this, where they get, after the completion of a program like this, they would be moved into more general programs like we offer at AGI.
Absolutely, and I would imagine that part of it, say for example, we're talking about those out of venue activities. I know that you have some amazing art groups, don't you? But we had loads
Well,
of
I'm the
conversations.
art therapist, so I might overemphasize the art stuff when I talk to you.
But what's really lovely within the program, so for example, one of the themes that might come up, it might be about hobbies and leisure, and you might have somebody said, oh gosh, I'd love to, a bit like James, I'd love to learn how to take photographs, I'd love to do something there. Well, actually what would be lovely is that we probably invite you, if it was, to come to the group, because the group feels safe. Oh, Karen comes in, you demonstrate something, and then the out of venue activities, we would go to one of the groups. And so that is a lovely way of kind of helping to build confidence in taking that first step, which I think, I know for myself, trying anything new can feel really difficult sometimes. And I think it brings it to life, it makes it real, and it enables people to see what's actually there, but in a way that is really supportive and hopefully incredibly smooth. Yes. Yeah, definitely. Is that
So
helpful?
we have another question here.
Yeah.
It's, what's the main message that you hope attendees will take away from this conference?
So for me, the main message that I have is that good quality of life is all about connectivity and a sense of purpose. Our lives are determined by the things that we do with the people that we love doing them with for as long as we can, and that there's no question about that. But I think for me, what the Journey Through Dementia program offers, it's the reciprocity. The fact is that we all have something to offer. Everybody has something to offer, and it's when we bring people together and we share what those things are that the magic happens. And so for me, my main message is that people achieve great things. I've seen people do incredible things. I've learned so much from individuals. It's the bringing together of individuals that enables that sharing to happen. And that's why, for me, it's about that group interaction, and the reciprocity of what people have to offer and what people have to learn together. And I think that's the power of it. But underpinning that is, that notion of meaning and purpose, and how do we continue to do those things?
Another question we have is, what if your family member has no interest in doing anything? And I think that's a really excellent question, because one of the things that I often tell caregivers when they come to me for counseling is, if I took no for an answer, 99 out of 100 people would not come ever to our program. But if I was a little persistent and I tried to charm and I tried to motivate and I didn't take no for an answer right away, 99 out of 100 people who walk through the door want to stay and want to come back. So how do you get people to walk through the door, Claire?
So I do a lot of really lovely taster sessions. It's a weird one when we're setting up a program in a community. So the ones in Scotland have got waiting lists, because what happens is people with dementia go to them, and then they tell their friends, and then word spreads, and then everybody wants to be part of it because they see what's happening there, and that is absolutely brilliant. If I'm working in a place where I've never worked before and people are not quite sure, what is this thing? What does it mean? Then offering really lovely taster sessions for people to come along to try to have conversations with. Often I think it's the fear of the unknown, or what is it going to feel like? So by making it as accessible as possible, always over a cup of tea in England, always over tea and food, always.
Coffee here.
Absolutely. Then people, honestly, but it's that notion, as soon as people come and they just have this sense of, gosh, this is such a lovely atmosphere, I've got this amazing space to have conversation, then that is the kind of key thing. But I think that often happens. We almost have to open up a space first, and then people will come. And I think that's the really important element of it. And that's the true kind of level of engagement. But the minute we have a program starting in whatever area it is, then word just spreads, and then we're constantly, oh, can we come? Oh, I'd love, can so and so, it would be great. And and I think that is a real testament to the people that come along to it. So it's the starting bit is the hard bit, I think, but once it starts,
I find for us too, the start, and often it takes a little bit of time with the person living with dementia,
and what we'll do in the
or with the caregiver. I often, the little bit of a caregiver crash course for the husbands and wives and sons and daughters that are trying to encourage this person to come. And one thing that I always try and make people understand, or help people to understand, is everything new generates anxiety, and everything familiar breeds security. So if we can find a way to make the introduction to something new feel as familiar as possible, that can really help too. And how that looks for each individual person is going to depend on the person, because I don't know what's familiar to your person. But working with you to figure that out and to find the way to make it comfortable enough that the person will give it a shot. I also think it's really important to not make people commit to forever on the first day.
No, not at all. So honestly, there's so many things with what you've said. So the other thing that we do at the end, for the final sessions of the program, often the group will say, oh, look, we'd really like to meet the next cohort who are coming. And that's really lovely. People sharing what's happened and what works, and etc. So that's really lovely. But I also think, which I didn't say, is that after the program's finished, often the groups just continue to meet on their own without our input. And that's really nice. Because people
that's a sign that these are real relationships that are being built.
Have built these friendships. And in the very first programs that I ran them in the university, because it was just cheaper. I didn't have access to funding, and it was lovely. People said that they would go to a family, oh, where are you going today? Oh, I'm going to the university to my course. And then I come down into the canteen in the university, which is an open space, and it was always lovely. I could see probably 2 or 3 cohorts of groups that were meeting, and so those groups have and do continue. And I don't know, that's not part of the plan, but it's really lovely when it happens and people get in touch and say, oh, by the way, we're still meeting, a year after we started, not every week, but just, but that spontaneity, I think it's really powerful.
We used to have a group here, one of our earlier stage groups, who used to, in between their meetings here, would go and play pickleball together. And I just love that. Like, I just think that's wonderful, So another question that we have, a quick logistical question for Patricia. Would you be able to give some of the eligibility criteria for your study? And I'm gonna assume exclusion criteria as well.
Yeah. So I think, what we are looking for is for older adults in the early, dementia journey that's starting and that are willing to participate in the group and would like to participate. And then what happened is that, Mina, that we have in the teams. And so she's going to go to their homes and do a more in-depth interview to see if the participants really would like to participate. So basically, the program, as I said, is going to be in English. So that's, ability to communicate in English, be willing to participate. I think, at this point, the eligibility criteria, it's a bit, it's a bit broad. And it's mostly when Mina, she goes to the interview. So that's one of the, specific aspects is that we do these individual interviews to really understand the person a little bit more and understand if the person would benefit from the group or not. So at this point, it's it's broad, it's individual. So as Claire was mentioned, so it's really a tailored approach. So we're going to tailor to different individuals, and also in this first feasibility study, that's what we are looking for. I'm not sure if I really answered the question, but there, we don't have all the criteria that usually in other studies we have just a list. I don't know, Claire, if there is anything that you'd like to add to
No,
that.
I think what you're saying is people come along, have a conversation and work out if it's right for them. And but the main thing is people are happy to be with other people and feel comfortable to do that. I think that sounds, and and isn't that the lovely thing about this program? It works with the people, the individuals as they come, and
It's very inclusive.
Really inclusive. Yeah, definitely.
Yes, it's wonderful. Another question. There's a really quick question that I can answer really quickly, and then I'm going to go to the longer question, even though they came in the opposite order. There's a question here that's not super on topic, but I can answer it really quickly, so I'm going to, if that's okay. It says this person was referred to the Geriatric Institute for a driving assessment after receiving a form from the SAAQ, and they're booked till fall. How do they get the evaluation done? That's not really Patricia, that's a whole different kind of part of the Geriatric Institute in terms of public, and that's public services, and there's no way to fast track the public services, the wait list. However, if you need to get it done now, there are occupational therapists in private practice. If you call the office and ask to speak with a counselor, we can give you some of that information, but I will warn you, it's very expensive to do it privately. So unless it's an urgent situation, you might just want to wait till your name comes up in the fall. Okay, but I encourage you to call a counselor and discuss that a little bit more because that's what we're here for. Okay, so the longer question, Claire and or Patricia, can you share a personal experience that shaped your perspective on this subject?
Is in terms of the Journey to Dementia program, or just in terms of people living with dementia?
I'm going to say people living with dementia in general, because I want to hear a little bit more about where you get your drive to do this work.
Well, it's a really strange thing. So I trained as an occupational therapist. I've never ever worked with or met people living with dementia before. So this is a long time. This is 30 years ago. I was a lot younger then, and the way that the world was thinking about dementia was very, very different to how it is now. So it wasn't really an area that many people were thinking about working in. So on the very first day of my training, I went on to work on the ward with people living with dementia. I'd never encountered people living with dementia before, and I had this really, at the end of the day, I just felt, and it's going to sound ridiculous, I felt like I'd come home. There was something about the amazing honesty and just that kind of sense of freedom of being myself in that environment that made me think I've never experienced anything quite like this before. And I think I want to spend the rest of my life learning from the individuals that I can work with and understanding more about what this means. And I've never ever looked back. It was just this thing that clicked with me, Karen. And the people that I've worked alongside, I've met so many individuals. I've worked with people at every point of a dementia journey, and I would honestly say that those individuals have really shaped the person that I am now, and I feel incredibly honoured and privileged around that. I do a lot of creative writing with people living with dementia, and again, just the poetry, the way that people speak, the language, the kind of, I just feel really, really privileged. And yeah, but from day one, I just had this experience going on placement and just thinking, wow, there's something that was just incredibly open. The last collection of poetry that John Killick and I put together was called Near Nature, and I think that kind of sums it up. It was just that feeling that people that I work alongside are just so much more in connection with those, that emotional side of ourselves that so often you don't see, and it gets hidden away by everybody else. And yeah, I just, like I say, it's just been an incredible honor and privilege. And every day I learn something new every day.
It's amazing working with people who are losing cognitive skills forces us all to see what really matters in life.
Absolutely.
Right. I often say, you know, you have to work on that deep, we so rarely get to interact with people on a deeper level in a way that's meaningful in sort of everyday life. And
Yeah.
you can't not do that when you try and connect with somebody who is being forced to, because of circumstance, to really start to think about, well, okay, what's my value as a human being if I can't use the toaster? Or what does it mean that I have a progressive disease? And what does it mean? Where is my value as a human being if I can't do X, Y, or Z, where I always thought my value lied before? And I think that's a beautiful, privileged place to be, because
Yeah.
I think we learn
Yeah.
so much that we would never be in a position to actually have to think about if this was the
Yeah.
case.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And people's generosity to let you into that, and the
is
generosity of that human
unbelievable.
spirit, absolutely. And people's ability to improvise and continue to learn and adapt. I just think it's extraordinary.
So a couple more, Patricia, did you want to add did you have anything that you wanted to share, any stories?
Well, I can share my personal, I think my story starts also about 30 years ago, a little bit different. My grandfather was diagnosed with, Alzheimer's at the time, and he was the most important person in my life. And I think being an occupational therapist, and at the time, I didn't know what we could do. There was no service, there was, really nothing. And that's back in Brazil. And just like I know throughout this time, I've been reflecting, he's always in my mind when I do this type of services, really to try to understand what can we do different, because there are a lot of things that we can do as occupational therapists. So then it has been building as an occupational therapist what we could have done, and every interaction that I have, it really shapes and changes my perspective too. But that's how it started. It's on a very personal note.
So another question is, the program sounds wonderful. However, with my mother, she may be able to participate in a lunch with me and then completely forget that this even occurred. Does that mean she's not a candidate because her short-term memory is non-existent?
So I guess it would just be about meeting, you know, I think the most important thing is that whoever attends feels okay, and that actually having a carryover, not everybody can remember every group that they attend, and that's okay. That's absolutely fine. But I think it's just that feeling comfortable being with other people and being able to participate in that way. And it might be, if that group's not quite the right thing, that there's something else. And later on, when we share resources, I'm going to share some of the resources that are kind of linked to the program, if you like, but that aren't part of it, but might sound really appropriate for your mum. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to add, if this is a program that's really designed for people who have been recently diagnosed, but they're people who have a diagnosis. So I would imagine the expectation is that there's going to be some short-term memory loss. However, if the person is farther along in the progression of the disease than would be appropriate for this program, it doesn't mean the things that are addressed in that program are not addressed in other programs in other ways. So, for example, in a program here at AGI, if we went back to Claire's list, we may not be talking about coping strategies in sort of that direct way where we say, okay, now we're going to have a conversation about this topic, but maybe we're teaching coping strategies through doing in an activity. I often think, I'll talk about the art therapy program because that's what I do, but I often think, creating art is a microcosm for life, right? So if I can teach you, for example, to be gentle with yourself when you're struggling to create something in a specific way, and to change the way you react to your own imperfections in doing art, well, you're going to start to do that in other parts of your life if we do that over and over and over again in a positive and in a supportive way, right? So even if a person can't come to a program like this, my ideal would be that everybody gets to start with a program like this, because that sets a foundation that we can build on. But even if that foundation wasn't set, it doesn't mean that there's no opportunity for growth. It doesn't mean that there's no opportunity for coping, because growth and coping happen all the time. And I know that flies in the face of what we hear about people living with dementia. Yeah. Everybody talks about loss, and only loss when it comes to dementia. And it's very much not my experience. I see people living with dementia grow in amazing ways every day. It's an incredible thing to see. And I see that growth happen at all different stages of the disease. This is one that's, let's get going on that path early. Think of it as an early intervention, but that doesn't mean that it's too late for that person if they haven't started.
My friend Agnes Houston, who's at a much later stage of dementia, says sometimes, she says, it's a bit like Christmas. You're not quite sure what's going to happen, but creativity, she's kind of quite looking forward to discovering what it is. And I think you're absolutely right. That's really well said, Karen. And I think, the point is that everybody's at a different point in a dementia journey. And I think that is, so, and the beauty of services and the way that we work is it's trying to meet people at each of those different points. But absolutely, growth continues throughout the whole kind of process.
So another question is, would you like volunteers, and where will it be?
That sounds great. Is that for Patricia, I imagine?
I assume that's for Patricia. So Patricia, would you like volunteers? And it will be at the IUGM, right? Which is on Queen Mary Road. Is that right?
Yeah. We are always looking, even, we would like to, to also individuals living with dementia, caregivers also to be part of the team. Maybe not even like, in any capacity that you'd love to contribute, we are open. So, and then if you're interested, you can just contact AGI. And then they would refer to me. But we would love to hear, everyone. Yeah.
Another question for Claire. What do you believe caused Scotland to carry this program across the country at a faster pace than other countries in the UK?
Because, a great question. So Scotland used something called improvement methodology. It's a kind of, so in the way that services in England focus, they focus on this kind of approach, evidence-based medicine, which is all about a kind of a big study that then takes a long time to roll out. Scotland, on the other hand, follow something called the improvement approach. So what they do is that they get enough evidence to show that something is okay, but then constantly they build and adapt it and constantly change it. So, making slight modifications so it completely fits with the broader context. So that is absolutely a kind of key element of that, and that's brilliant. Scotland's also a lot smaller country, and they're a lot further ahead. They had respite at home in kind of with groups of identified individuals who would open up their homes for respite back in probably about in the 1990s. They were so much further ahead than we ever were. And then the other thing that's really good is that the way that Scottish Government works is that they work really in partnership with Alzheimer Scotland. So the third sector input directly into government policy, and because with the success of the programme and seeing the kind of amazing things that happened through it, because it became part of policy, it then drives the resources that are available for health services then to deliver it, and it filters down. So there are really good reasons why it's particularly strong in Scotland, and they've got an amazing model that goes from a kind of a universal support materials, resources, targeted, and then specialist, and they've taken Journey Through Dementia and a program called Home-Based Memory Rehabilitation as their two bits. So yeah, it's great. And then the other bit that I should have said is that Scotland's very, very rural, and also when COVID hit, a lot of the therapists took this also and did an online version of it as well. So that was another thing that happened about delivering it from people's own homes as well. So there was lots of kind of other things that went on. But yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, and as I say, really kind of strong in Wales as well. Sheffield definitely strong, adopted in parts of the capital, but again, just the way that our services in England are a bit less coherent than Scotland.
Yeah.
Is that helpful?
Patricia, do you envision a way in which this program in a later iteration could become in some way embedded into what we offer here in the public health system?
Yeah, I think, right now what we'd like to hear is from all stakeholders, because I think the next step is really to look at how we can implement and who would be interested, right? Because we need money. At the end of the day, we need that, to implement. This program, one aspect is really, the community. So then it's really having a conversations how we can really still, in the healthcare system and the community, how we can bring this together. But for sure, we can have also different, versions of the program, because I've been contacted by, some rehab centers for some other that they'd like to, to explore. So at this stage we are really, would like to explore. So the first is really to see, does people want to have, this program here? Does it, would work here? And then it's really about talking with different stakeholders, really to understand how it would work here, because it may be a different model than what Claire has experienced. So and we are always open, to hear from anybody that would be interested, just to reflect and to brainstorm.
Well, it looks like we're at the end of the questions that we have so far. We're going to take a little bit of a break. I'm going to suggest that we reconvene at 11:20, give everybody a half an hour to do what they need to do, take a little break. We're going to come back and we're going to focus a little bit less on this specific program and a little bit more on, well, given what we have at our disposal now here in Quebec, how do we find a roadmap for making sure that families are supported? So we're going to have a panel discussion. We're going to encourage you to ask your questions, share what resources that you found in our community that have worked well for you and for your family, or if you're a professional caregiver, what resources have worked for your clientele. Yeah, so that's what we're going to do for the second half of the conference. Yeah, we'll meet again in half an hour and jump into that. Okay, thank you. This is me calling everybody back to their seats. I can't tell who's there and who isn't, but I keep covering my own screen. There we go. All right. So I'm going to ask if our panelists can please turn on their cameras and so that we can see everybody. Wonderful. Hello, Mark. Hi, Linda. Just waiting for Maravik to turn on her camera. There's Maravik. All right. So welcome back, everybody. For the second half of the conference, we thought that we would do something a little bit different. We're going to have a discussion. We're going to try and answer your questions, but we're also going to have a little bit of a guided discussion. We want to talk about what exists right now in our community to help nurture the well-being of people living with dementia and their families. Because sometimes we feel like there's no roadmap, right? For some people, and I'm sorry, I'm just trying to change my slide. For some people, you know, one of the questions that we get a lot when people first find us at AGI after diagnosis is, I got the diagnosis and nobody gave me a roadmap for what to do next. And so we're going to try and answer as many questions about the what's out there that you might have. We're also going to talk to some people who are living the experience of either being diagnosed with dementia or having a family member who's been diagnosed with dementia so that we can discuss what their experiences have been and what they've found to help improve quality of life. So let me first introduce you to all of our panel members this morning. I was going to say this afternoon, but it's not afternoon yet. So of course we have Claire and Patricia, who I introduced at the beginning of the conference. We also have the honor of having with us Marc Leblanc. Marc, if you could give everybody a wave. Sorry, I'm just looking for my introduction page. All right, so Marc is a kind, passionate, and creative person. He's a man of many talents and interests with a deep love for his community, friends, and family. Since being diagnosed with dementia, Marc has shown remarkable determination to face his condition head on. He's chosen to share both his challenges and his hope for the future with others living with dementia. His journey is a testament to his resilience and his commitment to making a positive impact. So welcome, Marc. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
We really
Thank you.
appreciate you taking your time out today for us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next, Linda's husband was diagnosed in 2017. Since that time, Linda has been devoted to making sure that both she and her husband live the best life possible. She's a supportive care partner, a fierce advocate, and above all, an affectionate, loving wife. As the years have gone by, Linda has become an active member in AGI's community as a close friend, role model, and mentor to others who find themselves in the situation of caring for a spouse with neurocognitive changes. Linda's balanced approach to care partnering and ability to see the perspective of others make her the ideal candidate to share her experiences today. So welcome, Linda. It's nice to see you. We also have a couple of AGI counselors on the panel today. We have AGI's Support Services Co-Manager, Maravik Apleon. Maravik's background is in therapeutic recreation, and she's been working with AGI since 2006 as a counselor and a recreation therapist for people living with dementia and their caregivers. In her work, Maravik is devoted to supporting her clients, both people living with dementia and caregivers, to live meaningful, purposeful lives. Ainsley Quilliams is also an AGI counselor with a background in special care counseling and a decade of experience. She's passionate about making a positive impact, and Ainsley continuously strives to enhance the well-being of her clients and their families. So welcome, everybody. I'm going to jump in with some. I've created a couple of questions to get the conversation started, but I also encourage everybody who's listening to send me in their questions, and we'll keep the conversation going that way. Okay. So I'm going to jump in with a guiding question about continuum of care, because that's really what we're going to talk about for the next little while. So the term continuum of care is bandied around a lot in the field of dementia care, but I'd like you to share with us, and maybe we can start with Claire or Patricia or both of you. When you hear the term continuum of care, what does that mean to you?
So shall I start with my definition, which is
Absolutely.
for me, I think continuum of care is care that is relevant at the point where somebody is at. So for me, it's about a notion of the person being in the center of the of care of where services are, and that services are made appropriate depending on what's happening for that individual in a really coordinated way. So there might be times when somebody needs kind of less support in one space and maybe more at another point in their journey. And so but it's that ability to respond and to be there. That's my very basic definition. So, but yeah, something about coordination, something about person in the middle, and something about responding to where people are at in whatever's happening to their
Right.
needs. Yeah.
So it's individualized. It's not a one size fits all. This is what everybody with dementia needs, point final. It doesn't matter what stage, what their character is, what their resources is, what their families are.
No, it's that idea that service is there to, the person's not expected to fit into the service is there to respond to who they are.
Does anybody have anything to add in terms of, and I think for the panelists, you can unmute yourselves so that it's easier for you to jump in if you have something to say. It'll make it easier to have a conversation. Obviously, if you end up having a lot of background noise, you can mute yourself again, but I think for now, go ahead and unmute yourselves. So I like this idea of looking at the continuum of care in terms of flexibility. And when I was preparing for this part of the conference, I started to kind of create lists of resources, and I realized that that's really how we work at AGI. We're going to find you the right resource at the right time for you. And so just sharing lists of resources can be really overwhelming, right? So I would rather us have a conversation, over the next hour or so, really about, well, okay, what are your needs and how can we help you to meet those needs using
Karen,
the resources that we have at our disposal.
Yeah, Karen, I don't know if this is your experience, but over here, I have a lot of people who say, I wish I'd have known about that at that point. It's almost like by the time somebody's managed to find that bit, it's almost like they're on to the next bit that they need.
Right,
And
which is why I think that the Journeying Through Dementia program is so exciting, because it gets you kind of in this world early on, so that we can help you, so that you're connected with people who can help you find those resources before you need them, not reactively after you're in a crisis or when it's even sometimes too late.
Yeah.
So I wanted to jump in with a question for Mark, and then maybe Linda can follow up with her experience.
Yep.
Mark, for you, when you were diagnosed, were you given any kind of starting point in terms of how to find services and what your next steps were?
Went from my GP to the CLSC, and then from the CLSC to the Douglas Hospital, and then from the Douglas Hospital then to the Alzheimer Society. So there's a whole, went bit by bit to then referrals then from this service, this center, this person to the next. So there's been a sense of move step by step, kind of moving along, and as long as you sort of did what you were referred to do in the first place, then you sort of follow that bouncing ball, if you will. And in the end, and along the way, that I found you guys, and finding you guys, then now we're proceeding with today. So it's been a sense of link, a sense of connection, a sense of newness. That's it.
Okay, good. So there was some kind of referral process for you that you went through, that you were referred to different doors into different services so that you would have some support. That's great. Because I think we often hear feedback that that's not happening. And I think that happens sometimes for some people, but it doesn't always happen consistently for everybody. Linda, what was your experience like for your husband?
So John's family doctor gave us a referral to the memory clinic. It took quite some time for that appointment to come up. When it did, we got a diagnosis of vascular dementia and possible Alzheimer's, and this was in fall of 2017. But I was really taken aback that there was nothing mentioned or offered in the way of psychosocial supports at the memory clinic. There was, a 6-month follow-up to see if he was adapting to Aricept, 1-year follow-up, and then 1 year after that kind of thing. I did not have the experience of being pointed toward resources early on. The resources I found through friends and family and asking around. And, I found AGI through an ad in the Suburban about a lecture and went to the lecture and found out about the activity center and, all the additional resources, which I found AGI right before the lockdown of March 2020.
Yeah.
So that's what really got us through the next several years of, first the online resources that were offered during lockdown, and then when the activity center reopened, and so forth. But
right.
There was nothing directly at the beginning in 2017.
Okay. And for AGI's counselors, is that like, because it seems like Mark and Linda have had quite different experiences in terms of sort of getting that door into getting psychosocial services. Is that inconsistency what you would expect?
In my case, in some of the families that I follow through, I know that when I ask them, most of the time they would say they were referred by a friend that has used the organization in the past. Some is like, they were referred by the memory clinic, depending on which doctor though that they are seeing. So some a specialist they know about our services, and some I guess doesn't. So there is like different thoughts about whether they're referred or not. But I know that in the beginning of, like, as just Linda said, prior to the pandemic, it seemed like there really were none, right? Like they were given the diagnosis and that was it. But it's hopeful to hear that, slowly clinics have been collecting resources in terms of like referring the families to psychosocial services. So it's promising to hear that some have, though, we need more. We need for the clinics to be more active in terms of their referrals, because it's like it doesn't finish there, right? It doesn't finish in the diagnosis. It doesn't finish in the 6-month wait for whether the medication is working or not. Like, I mean, there's a bigger aspect in the lives of our clientele and the families of person living with dementia that like need to be supported.
I think one of the
possible,
yeah.
yes. Mm-hmm.
I think as a counselor, one of my concerns always is that the onus tends to be, on the person living with dementia, or
Right.
if they're lucky and they have a family member who accompanies them, the onus is
Right.
on the patient and their family to reach out and call those services, which for some people who are experiencing memory loss and may not have help to do that, that's a concern. Right? Because it's not sort of I'm automatically referring you to somebody who's going to call you. It's I give you this phone number and this pamphlet and you have to call. So given that, I think it's really important that we at least give some sense to those of you who are participating who might be new in this world and maybe didn't get any of those resources, kind of a first step to finding out what's out there and what exists for you. So of course, I'm going to give you information about AGI services a little bit later on, but I think this is a good point to share this information with you. The provincial government in Quebec actually does have two resource directories, telephone resource directories that are really quite good. If you call these numbers, or you can go on their websites and you give them your postal code, they can tell you all of the different community organizations that are providing services in your area. That's huge, right? Because, you know, you can call and speak, you know, you can Google and you can speak to people from all over the place, but to know what's available in your area for your situation is really important. So L'Appui pour les proches aidants is an organization that finds resources for caregivers. However, many of the resources for caregivers also incorporate resources for people who have been diagnosed with dementia. And 211, you just call 211, just like calling 811 or 311 or 911, depending what you're looking for. 211 is a service that will refer you to different organizations that provide psychosocial services. So they're both really great resources. Many people don't know that they exist. If you're looking for what's available to me in your area and you want a more comprehensive way of making sure you haven't missed anything, that's a great idea. And you know, some things that you may be told exist might not be ready for you right now where you are in your continuum of care, but write them down because maybe at some point they will be right for you. Or just call on a regular basis because things changes and sometimes new things become available that you didn't know about. Okay, so it's a really good idea to make those phone calls every once in a while and see what's available to you in your area. Okay. All right, so let's keep going with some questions. Linda, as your husband's dementia progressed, what were some areas of his care of the care that he received that you really felt like were well covered? And which were some areas that were more challenging? What were some of his needs that were more challenging for you to find resources to help?
Okay, well, the initial referral in 2017 that happened to the memory clinic, and then in 2021 I asked for a referral to the CLSC. At this point, because my husband has insight into his condition, he was okay with me going along to medical appointments with him. So that was big right there, to be able to keep his family doctor abreast of how things were going. So we got the referral to the CLSC, and you know that started its way through the labyrinth of whatever bureaucratic process. 6 months later, I hadn't heard anything, and I, you know, done follow-up calls and never heard. And so I got my adult daughter to do a follow-up call, and lo and behold, somehow I got a call, you know, within a couple of weeks and had an appointment with a case manager. So, you know, the initial referral worked, but it took some additional polite pushing for the service to actually follow through.
And you know, that's one of those little intuitive tricks that most people don't get told, which is if you're having a hard time getting a call back, have another family member call on your behalf, and sometimes the call back happens more quickly. Why
Yeah,
that
happens?
That
was a great tip I got from AGI. You know? Yeah, thank you for that. So we had that initial meeting, and the case manager agreed that I should be able to get some respite time, because at this point, John's needs, this is 2021, he'd lost his driver's license, and you know, his needs had increased. And I had learned from a family member about the Chèque Emploi service, because in order to get those respite hours approved, if I'd had to wait for a CLSC employee to provide the respite time, it wouldn't have been approved because they didn't have the workers.
So let me just give the broad strokes before, and then I'll let you continue, Linda, about what the Chèque Emploi program is, because not everyone may know. So Chèque Emploi is a program to provide in-home care to a person living with dementia through the CLSC. But in the Chèque Emploi program, instead of having the CLSC send their own workers, they give you a budget. You hire your own worker. Your worker bills the CLSC, and the CLSC pays that number of hours from your budget. There's some advantages to that, and advantages and disadvantages to the program. Some of the advantages are you can choose your worker, you can choose the schedule, and you'll have the same worker every time. That's huge. Disadvantages, you have to find your worker, you have to schedule your worker, you have to manage the scheduling going on. So, you know, depending on your situation, asking for Chèque Emploi in lieu of having the CLSC send their own workers can be really an advantage. In theory, you should be able to get the same number of hours in each, whether the CLSC is sending their own workers or you're going through Chèque Emploi. But in my experience, often you can get some more hours through Chèque Emploi because they don't have to. They're sometimes they're short-staffed and don't have the workers to send you. So Chèque Emploi is is one of those resources that you can access through the CLSC. I'm going to give you in a minute some information on how to contact your local CLSC and how to access public services. But Linda, I'm going to ask you, I interrupted you, so I'm going to let you continue.
So I was fortunate to be able to find people to cover the 8 hours a week that I was given, and that allowed me to go to my aqua arthritics classes 2 days a week and to my choir practice on Wednesday nights, which were both, as you know, you can imagine just how much that did for my well-being. From friends, I realized that it can be difficult to find employees through Chèque Emploi because it pays just around $20 an hour, or it was when I was using the service. And so, and it's on the books. So a lot of people don't want to work on the books. So I was just really fortunate and really blessed to have that for a year. One thing I found was the request was put in, the information was put in, but I wasn't informed when it had been approved. So I could have been accessing that service for a couple of months before I actually found out that it was in operation. So communication with the system can be really challenging. And then just over a year ago, my husband was in hospital for 6 weeks and then went into long-term care. And so a really big problem is the lack of long-term care beds in our area in the West Island. And so I ended up having to agree to a place way in the East End, and was driving there several times a week for 10 months. And I'm just really, really grateful that 2 months ago, my husband was moved to a very good facility in the West Island. So that's been a huge change for both of us. Just, you know, quality of care, quality of life, and 15 minutes drive as opposed to 45 plus, and flexibility as opposed to having to avoid, you know, traffic of Midtown at the beginning and end of the day. Those have been really, really, that's been a huge, huge change. And I could mention, you know, during the lockdown and during the pandemic, the lack of activity centers and all of that shut down. So that was challenging, but, you know, as I mentioned, AGI was there for the rescue. And I did have also during the lockdown briefly an in-home worker who came from Nova in the West Island. That didn't really work out. The person wasn't really appropriate, but that was a service that some people use and find very helpful. I'll stop there.
I'm going to quickly share with you information on accessing services in the public, since Linda was talking a little bit about services in the public sector. So this is some starting points to access services in the public sector. Each local CIUS can offer various services and programs for people living with dementia and for their care partners. Exactly what's available to you, there's some differences between CIUSs. So really it's important to contact your local CIUS. To find your local CIUS, if you take a look at, and I will send out to the people who were participating in the conference, I will send this information out so you don't have to feel like you have to jot it down. But if you go to this website and search by your postal code, they will give you the phone number to the intake department at your local CIUS. I encourage everyone to call their local CIUS and ask for a psychosocial assessment to see whether or not you're available, you're eligible for any services. Sometimes it takes a while because there's wait lists. So call before you think you need it. It's not a great idea to wait for the crisis, okay? You can also call Info Santé and Info Social. So there's a new branch to the 811 phone number that will give you immediate access to a psychosocial worker or a nurse if there's an acute but non-emergency situation that you're dealing with. So by non-emergency, I mean not something that's putting you at immediate risk. If there's something putting you at immediate risk, then you call 911, okay? But if it's something that you need an answer to or you're concerned about and you're not sure where to go, then you can call 811 and talk to either a nurse if it's a physical care issue or a psychosocial worker if it's a more mental health issue. Okay, so those are great access points to the public system. Linda, you had an experience with that?
No, I'm sorry. It's an afterthought to what I was saying about accessing the Chèque Emploi service. As I said, the case manager agreed, but then my husband was not receptive to having anybody come into the home. So to begin with, there was, it was basically a closed door on his part. And then, here's a silver lining in an unfortunate situation. I broke my wrist and my right hand, and I'm right-handed. And that changed the situation because he was willing to accept services for me that he would not have accepted for himself. So I just wanted to throw that in. It can make a difference at a crucial.
And you were smart enough to capitalize on that opportunity that we would have loved to go away, right? Maybe Ainsley, maybe you could speak to helping people through the discomfort of accepting services, especially accepting someone in the home, because that's something I think we hear a lot.
Yeah, based on working with many families, this is something that comes up often. I think kind of going back to what Claire and Caregiver were saying before about personalized care, this is another really, it's another time in which I think it's so important to get to know the individual, what's their personality like now, what has it been like prior to diagnosis, get to know the family, their current situation, and talk with a counselor. I think that we can work together, but I think we have to, each individual is unique and should be treated as such. So I think in that kind of situation, I always encourage caregivers to seek some form of counseling, whether it's one of us at AGI or if they're looking for a counselor, in their area because they prefer in person, we try to refer them to counselors in their area as well, just to sit down and work together, collaborate, and see what they can do.
Maravik, do you have anything to add?
No, actually, Karen, I'm actually curious to take Mark's opinion, especially Mark, because you've been you've been going to different resources, taking advantage of the services. I'm just curious, in your opinion, what are the things that really you think works and that makes you motivated to come and attend these programs. So yeah.
What I'm going to say to you just now is while you guys have been talking and I've been paying attention, I got an email from my other counselor from the Alzheimer's group that's in Notre Dame Street in Montreal. So in the end, she started calling me saying, "I am available for you. You want to make an appointment?" So she's sort of doing outreach to me to say, "It's been a long time. Why don't you make an appointment call?" So in the end, that kind of outreach is out there for me. And she was someone who I would go to originally, then in terms of making sense of any of it, and she helped me she referred me to the art therapy program in their service that I've taken advantage of too. So there have been opportunities that I've done some. I've started with these people, and in the end, there's been some payoffs to that. And in the end, I'm part of their lifestyle, part of their community now. They sort of know me by name when I show up in the front door. They sort of give me a bit, "Hello, how are you? Where you been? What's up?" And there's a bit of sense of connection to it. And they've just done an outreach phone call with me earlier on while we are on this conversation now. So all that sense of connection it's live, it's active, and I appreciate it. And then you guys then have been your own thing then too. So I've got two of you going at the same time. So in that spirit, then I've got to fend you all off in terms of your popularity with me. And the Douglas Hospital too. I've got the Douglas Hospital pay attention to me too.
Good.
Yeah.
That's great. I'm glad you're having that experience, Mark.
Well,
that people are reaching out to you to make sure that
yeah.
you're staying connected with them. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So I do have a few questions here, and maybe I'll jump into the questions that I see. Actually, you know what? Before I do that, let me share the rest of the email, the slideshow that I created in terms of what exists out there in terms of accessing services. Okay, so and then we're going to jump into some of the other more kind of general questions that we've got going on here. Okay, so let me share my screen quickly. So we talked about accessing, finding out what's in your community through calling l'appui pour les proches aidants or 211. We talked about accessing public services by calling your local CIUS and by calling 811 for acute things. I want to share a little bit with you about what we do at AGI because we're very much focused on supporting people who are living with dementia and the people who are supporting them in ways that are apart from what the medical community tends to focus on. So I'm not saying that there aren't shared services and shared programs and shared ways of support. There absolutely is. But what we're really trying to do is nurture the psychosocial well-being of people living with dementia really on a day-to-day basis. And we do that in a lot of ways. We offer counseling. We can provide counseling to people who have been diagnosed with dementia. We can provide counseling to their husbands and their wives and their sons and their daughters and their friends and anyone who is in their lives. We also will consult with professional care partners. So we're really there to be an access point to getting some education, to understanding the behaviors, to understanding ways to cope with the symptoms, and to respond in certain situations, to finding resources, to helping you understand the best ways to advocate without alienating. All of that stuff you can do in counseling. And the great news is at AGI, counseling is free and ongoing. Yeah. So don't be shy. If you haven't called an AGI counselor, I strongly suggest that you do. Outside of counseling, we also provide education. We have courses, we have webinars, we have trainings, we do lots of education in our support groups and in our counseling sessions. We really want to help you understand what is dementia, how it affects a person, what are some behavioral reactions that we see sometimes, and how do we cope with those things. We run lots of support groups for family members and for people who are recently diagnosed. And I maybe will ask, after I kind of go through this slide quickly, I'm going to ask Ainsley to talk a little bit more about our early stage support group, because we're starting a new one and it's kind of a nice thing to talk about. Right. One of the real foundations of what we do here at AGI is our therapeutic activity program, which incorporates both art and music therapy. unlike some day programs in the city, our mandate is not exclusively respite for caregivers. I'm all for respite for caregivers. Please don't think that I'm negative about day centers whose main mandate is respite for caregivers, because I'm not, because lots of wonderful things happen in those environments. But our mandate is to provide therapeutic programming for the person who's been diagnosed with dementia, which means that being here and being safe is not enough. We're really a growth mindset kind of organization. We really want our members and our participants in our activity programs to feel like they're coming to a place where they have peers, where they have social and emotional support, where they're learning to cope with the challenges that they're facing on a day-to-day basis. Very much what Claire and Patricia were talking about in terms of the journeying through dementia, but of course we do this at many different stages of the disease. So all of our programs are run by professionals. Of course, we have some volunteers, but never without professionals in the room. And we're really there to nurture the psychosocial well-being of everybody who walks through the door. So that's what we do. Anybody who wants more information is welcome to call, but I wanted to give you a little bit of information on that. And then I'm also going to follow this up with giving the floor to Claire, so she can talk a little bit about the resources that she has that you have access to through the wonderful power of the internet.
Yeah, thank you. Shall I share my screen and just show the website?
Sure,
Karen, if that's
absolutely.
okay. Yeah, that's
I
awesome.
probably have to stop my share, right? There we go.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so thank you for that. And I won't take up much time, but I think one of the things that that we were really struck by from what we heard over and over again in terms of conversations with people living with dementia and their families was that there's a huge array of resources that are out there, but sometimes it's just knowing where to start. And it's that notion of you find a resource and then it asks you to click on something else and then you go to something else, and it can get really confusing. And so what we did, a bit like with the Journey Through Dementia programme, we worked in partnership with people living with dementia and a whole range of amazing folk. And we just put together a really simple site. And the site is called brilliant, Dementia Together Online. It's freely accessible to everybody. But what it comprises of is a series of curated topics that you can share, that you can kind of dip into, you can share with family members. And it's a balance between activities that link really closely to things that we know are really helpful. For example, ways of establishing a routine, versus activities that are kind of maybe more linked to the arts. For example, art, poetry, creative writing, lots of different kind of more creative leisure type activities. Each of the topics follows a very, very similar structure based on what people living with dementia told us. So, for example, there is always something to talk about, because people said actually it's really nice to have a topic to share with, to create a focus for conversation. There's something for you to try. So again, free downloadable kind of resources and materials. Again, many based in the broader evidence. There's something to play. So kind of whether that's memory games or kind of word searches, but the idea being that really lovely things that kind of help to kind of that you can that just a bit of fun really, and then insignificantly really lovely resources that link to what's more. If you're interested in something then or want to explore more, then we have on there are videos, there are links to other really lovely materials, and again all there, everything is free, everything is available. And then there's a kind of a print at home version if you're wanting just to download the worksheets and the materials. And it's, as I say, I think there are 32 curated themes, so they all follow that same structure, as I say, and they've been developed in partnership with some amazing people living with dementia, artists, poets, creatives. You know, it's a fantastic group effort from everybody, and really links very closely to professional bodies, to Alzheimer Scotland and to other organisations. But people tell us it's really helpful and useful. It's been downloaded about 120,000 times since we put it up there, and we continue to add to it and build on it depending on what people tell us is missing from it. So we do. It is updated, but as I say, the resources that it links to are really, really nice, and I would definitely recommend that you have a peek at it. And Karen really helpfully has got a link to the website, and again, you're really, really welcome to anything that is on there. But the beauty of it, as I say, it's curated, so it's in little chunks, so you know, around these topics and themes, and hopefully there might be something that's useful in there. And if it's something's missing, drop me an email, definitely, because as I say, we do continue to adapt and develop it, and you know, and it's made in partnership with people, so that's the joy of it. Thank you for that.
I love how diverse the topics are. I think that's really nice. You know?
There's everything. There is
Yeah.
everything, and that's what we loved from, especially around the pets. You know, people wanted to know, right? We want to make pet biscuits, and how do you do that? And pets are really important.
Oh,
So
that's a
many people.
great idea.
Yeah, but we found
I
them,
think
and we're like,
I'm
oh
gonna
yeah,
I'm gonna use that idea in the activity center, making pet biscuits and then
it's
feeding them to our
fantastic.
therapy dog.
I love it, honestly, but brilliant.
That's great. That's great. So we have a whole bunch of questions that have come up. I'm going to maybe jump in with some of them in no particular order, just in whatever order that they catch my eye. And maybe for this first one, oh, well, here's one that's very quick and easy for me to answer. It says, does AGI have wait lists for appointment with counselors and for support groups? We try and keep our wait lists to the minimum. Of course, it's impossible to run programming with no wait lists everywhere, but we try and be really creative to try and make sure that you get services as quickly as possible. When you call for an appointment with a counselor, that's usually the first entry point at AGI, is to give us a call, and we will do some intake and then get you connected with a counselor right away. Usually it's 2 or 3 weeks before you get your first call back from a counselor to set an appointment with you. We try and get to people quicker than that, but 2 or 3 weeks is pretty, I think it's pretty good. So we try, like I said, we try and keep wait lists to a minimum. There's sometimes wait lists for some activity programs. There's sometimes wait lists for support groups. But we try and keep that to a minimum. Did you have something to say, Patricia? I thought I saw your hand up. No? Okay, so I can answer that one quick. All right, the next one, maybe what I'll do is I'll ask the question, and then anybody who has a thought that you want to answer, just put up your hand. It says, what's a practical tip for the extended family to treat our relatives who have dementia? So by that, I'm guessing that you're having a bit of a hard time with extended family members understanding positive and respectful and connecting ways to interact with a person who has dementia. Does anybody want to speak to that? Then I'm putting Maravik on the spot. What would you say, Maravik, to somebody who came to you in counseling and said, listen, our extended family, they don't always treat the person the way I would like them to treat the person?
It's actually a really tough question, right? Because what's happening is that extended families who doesn't see their loved ones regularly may sometimes notice differently from the person who's there regularly. They may say like, oh, mom is the same thing. I mean, aunt is like, there's nothing wrong with aunt. Like, I mean, so normally what I would tell the families is I would tell them like, let them come in and stay with you for at least 24 hours. And then they will know exactly the difference. And they'll really see what you're experiencing 24/7 if you're the primary caregiver. And then that's the only way sometimes for the extended family to understand what's really happening. So that's a practical tip that I could, how do you say this? Because I don't see, for me, really, there's no shortcut in a way. I mean, to make the family understand that are like live farther or like or who's not there regularly to really see what's going on and what's happening, unless they really stay for for a good a significant time to really witness what's happening. And for you to explain as well, like, I mean, what works, what doesn't work. So I don't know, anyone wants to
Yeah, I'm wondering, yeah, maybe Linda,
Linda,
have you had any experience with sort of having to communicate John's needs with people who maybe aren't spending as much time with him as you are?
I would say not so much that, although no, none of our children live here. So when they've been around John, they picked up pretty quickly that things had changed significantly. Just as a thought, though, for someone, if there's a particular person who is really in the family who's really not grasping what the situation is, if they could be persuaded to take AGI's Dementia 101 course, it really is a very good introduction to what's going on. I learned so much in that first course in March of 2020, and have recommended it to a lot of people since then.
Mark, have you noticed a shift in the way people are treating you, whether it's within your family or just in general?
They're nothing but support, nothing but support.
Good.
Like caring and concern and loving and whatever. And sometimes, sometimes like overwhelmingly so. Get out of my way, kind of so. All of a sudden I reject the affections, the caring and the concerns. It's I'm okay. Leave me alone. I'm okay. So that's I'm overstating it, but I'm just suggesting that I've only had positive family connections and friendship connections, saying best of luck to you. How can we be of help? Blah blah. So it's been a good thing in general terms.
Yeah, I think sometimes you saying that I think really illustrates that even if sometimes it's a little bit too much, you recognize the intention is good, right? And so
Yes.
sometimes family members get really upset when somebody interacts with the person who's been diagnosed, not in what we consider the ideal way or the most respectful way. But I think that people do recognize intention, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes we can let things go too, right, Mark? If somebody's a little bit too much, it might kind of get on your nerves, but you still recognize that they're doing their best.
Exactly. No, exactly so. Exactly so. My daughter, for example, has found you guys for me. So my daughter then was an intervener. She sort of helped me get to you guys, And in the end, she was just being me. She was just being her dad's daughter. And in the end, she did it. She made that proactive outreach to you guys, and here we are. So many years, so many weeks later, it's paying off. So it's a good thing. It's a good.
Yeah. I think sometimes too, family members might be afraid to jump in because they're afraid of doing things wrong. And I think, being there is more important than not being there, right?
Cool.
For most situations, obviously, there's exceptions to everything. So we have another question here. I'm going to paraphrase it. The question is really about how it can sometimes be difficult to be compassionate and caring as a wife when you feel that the person who's been diagnosed with dementia, in this case, the husband, is in denial, reserves are depleted with exhaustion and frustration, and this wife feels like she's experiencing caregiver burnout. She's had counseling through the CLSC, but doesn't feel any that she's getting ahead because she's not feeling that she's getting the answers to the questions that she has to handle situations. Does anybody want to speak to burnout and compassion fatigue? Linda, yes, absolutely.
Well, I mean, I think the best resource that I have found is the spousal support group that I've been attending through AGI, and I think this is my third year with one or another group. So that's just immensely helpful to be with other people who get it. But what made me decide to join a spousal support group was a workshop on guilt that AGI offered, and the person leading it and also other members of the group were so open and sharing. And I realized that as caregivers, there's no escape from guilt. You know, you fall short every day of whatever your conception of an ideal caregiver is. And I think the more pressure you put on yourself, the more risk there is of burnout. So getting that support through counseling by all means, but you know, spousal support group is just great. It's just really, really helps. And kind of learning to live with guilt, you know, because I'm human, caregivers are all human. We'll come to the limits of our patience, you know, we'll hit compassion fatigue, particularly if your partner is one of the 50% or so who doesn't have insight and thinks you're making it all up. I mean, wow, that's just a really, really difficult situation to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And one has to find respite, one has to find support. It's essential.
You know, I think part of this question might be a reaction to my description of you at the beginning as a compassionate and loving and affectionate wife. And I do absolutely genuinely see you that way, because I think you are all of those things. But nobody can be all of those things every moment of every day, right? There are moments where that doesn't feel right, right? Yeah. Yeah. Because you're human, you're not Mother Teresa, and nobody here has to be Mother Teresa, right?
Even Mother Teresa wasn't Mother Teresa. I mean, in the sense of it was a lady with a temper.
Yeah, and you know, you and I have been meeting for a long time, and I think that there was a point where for you the penny dropped that you still had to have your own life.
Oh yeah.
And that's really hard to do. Claire, did you have something to share?
Yeah, I wanted to ask your question, Linda, in connection to that. You talked about the value of your choir, and you talked about the value of your, was it aquarobics or
aquaarthritics?
Fantastic. Yeah, brilliant. And I just wondered if that was something about maintaining that well-being, because if you're not well as somebody who's a partner or a caregiver, then how can you continue to give out the whole time? And taking that time is so important. And I just wondered if you could talk to that at all.
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, the aquaarthritics, it's a physical workout, but also it's a community. It's a, you know, we sort of become friends because we've been doing this for 3 years, and some people have been doing it for way longer. And the choir is also a community, plus singing and harmony brings me joy. That really floats my boat. So I'm looking after myself physically and in terms of connection. And, you know, have made a point, particularly since my husband went into care. So there's been more flexibility. Have made a point of reaching out to friends and trying to do something social, at least every couple of weeks, if not every week, you know, going out for lunch or meeting someone for coffee or going for a walk or something, just to continue to nourish my own body and spirit.
And not be burnt out as, yeah, really important. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, so much of what we talked about today was the importance of connectivity and activity for people who have been diagnosed with dementia. And I think it's absolutely the case. And actually, we had a lovely bit of kismet when we introduced Linda and Mark to each other and discovered they already knew each other through a shared activity, which is amazing and beautiful and wonderful, right? But I think that it's important to remember, and you know, something that I feel like I say all the time, and people are probably tired of hearing me say it, but Linda, you as John's wife is as important and valuable as John. Both of you and your quality of life and your well-being matter equally. Ainsley, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to that question and to the individual who wrote it. I think that it's not easy to name that and share that with others. So first of all, thank you. And I want to speak to, I think, how the counseling is maybe a little different here at AGI, because like Karen said, it's ongoing. So really, this is a service that it's for you. We want to meet your needs as best as we can. We want to help you set goals. And we're here to work on that with you for however long you need. We're the frequency that you need to the best of our ability, what those sessions look like, how those goals change over time. But we really try to limit that bouncing around and provide you that consistent support in counseling. And hopefully that does help with things like compassion fatigue. Hopefully we can work on, preventing caregiver burnout. Those are important ways that I think the counseling may be a little bit different here at AGI. At least that's what we aim for.
So we have a couple of other questions. And there's a new message. So let me just see if that's a follow-up to these questions first. Oh, there's a question about day centers in the West Island, because this person was told that there was a 3-year waiting list for a day center place. 3 years seems awfully long. Most people are not waiting 3 years. Okay, so it sounds like you're probably talking about one of the public day centers. Either there's a couple, there's one in Il Bazaar, and there's one in St. Anne de Bellevue. Those are run through the CIUSs in those territories. I would say absolutely go ahead and put yourself on the wait list for those programs. But yes, you might wait a little bit longer. There are other day centers as well, though. There's a day center at Nova West Island that's very, very good, very well respected in the community. There's a day center in Lachine, which off the top of my head, I can't think of. Ainsley, do you have that information close by? Ainsley's my go-to person. She always remembers. Oh, I'm sorry. I was told for a residence, somebody was saying for a CHSLD. So a CHSLD is a nursing home level of care. It's 3.5 hours or more a day. So yes, it's true that there is a lack of beds on the West Island, which is why Linda was mentioning that her husband was placed in a transit bed in the East End until a bed became available closer to home. This is a huge topic that we could spend an entire conference just talking about this topic. My suggestion is that you give us a call and talk to a counselor about your specific situation and what you're looking for. Because really, it's not quite as straightforward as to say you put a person on a wait list and it's first come, first serve after 3 years. The public system prioritizes according to need. So if you're going from the hospital, you're the first priority, you'll find a bed sooner. If you're from home and you're in a safe living situation, then your lowest priority, and maybe at that point you are waiting 3 years. So it really depends on what your situation is. I could go on and on about helping you understand the nuance of how placement in the public sector works, but I think it's probably better just to meet with Ainsley or Maravik or I in a private counseling session, so we figure out what your situation is and what your options are. Okay. All right. So, did you have something to say, Mark? Welcome to jump in. Oh, okay. All right. So the next question we have is, sorry, where was it? It's a question about how family members can be trained or supported to facilitate meaningful activities at home. Well, the first thing I'm going to do before I ask, I'm absolutely going to ask you guys to jump in on that. Maybe Patricia or Claire might want to start, but I'm first going to plug, I happen to have this on my desk. I got a course coming up. June, you can find it on our website, June 10th and 17th. It's a 6-hour course over 2 parts from 9:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's a course called Using Meaningful Activities to Support Unmet Needs. And it's a course on doing activities at home with the person living with dementia. So it was a nice opportunity to plug my course. But maybe Claire, do you want to jump in on
I'm going to pass to Patricia only because I feel like I've spoken too much today. Oh, I could just end up hogging it. I'm just going to try and I'm trying to be quiet, everybody, for a minute. Patricia, I think.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great question. And I think, Karen already started giving the answer as well. So sometimes there are some resources. And Claire, I think some of the resources that you have shared also, right, are some opportunities to start, thinking about that. Of course, Journeying Through Dementia, it's also one of the programs that can address. I think there are different ways, but I think like the the quickest one now, it's like, the course from Karen, the material that Claire, has shared as well. Because also, to talk about meaningful activities, I think there is no one recipe or one size fits all. So we really need to understand, specific. So it's a bit difficult for me to start giving, some tips without really understanding the situation. But I think, you have some very good resources there.
I have a question actually, because yeah, I know Claire and Patricia, yeah, in the program you mentioned that it's tailored, and there are people that's like, I want to like learn how to do technology and everything, and it seemed like what I noticed is like you really need repetition in order for some of these ideas to stick in. And sometimes I don't know if you like when they're in the center, it's good, but do you also encourage these strategies to continue at home? And how do you do that? Like, how do you like communicate that to the families? I guess that's where my curiosity lies now. So yeah.
Yeah, no, great, good. So actually, I'm going to talk. I can't help it. So I think for me, it's about embedding it into those routines. So having a kind of rhythm and a structure can be really helpful. And as you say, Maravik, being able to kind of not just do it once, but to have it as just a kind of a rhythm and a kind of yeah, just so it's repeated in a way that is, but in a positive way. I think the other things that I would say, and that I always encourage, is just to think about the environment where you're going to share an activity. Often people tell me that it can be really distracting if there's too much sound or noise. And, we all know if you're trying to concentrate on something and you're trying to follow something, it can be tricky. I think often of ways of breaking things down into, if something's not quite working, it's sharing something that you're going to really enjoy together. If it's not quite working, it might be not being as overwhelming with something, maybe just pulling things back a little bit, doing kind of one thing gently at a time, thinking about the sensory quality of what you're doing. So I think there are lots and lots of different ways of really thinking about where to engage with somebody at that moment. But I think your point, Maravik, is really important. I think if you can find a way to build a lovely rhythm and a routine, I think it can be really, really super helpful, because it just gives a structure that can really help in terms of, it not becoming something extra, but it becoming part of what you do. And I always say, everyday things can be made into a really lovely activity, whether it's the kind of the textures of dressing or making a meal together, really lovely things, but make it all part of like the whole process. But recognizing also on the other questions about it's exhausting, you need time, be gentle with yourself also when you're doing it, and go on the course that you're running. It sounds amazing. If I was there, Karen, I'd be on it. I'd come
I would love for you to be there. I have to say, as you're talking about like the sensory aspect, I have like intense professional jealousy over how beautiful your resources are, your activity resources. Like, they're gorgeous. They just look so amazing. I want to touch them and look at them.
That's interesting,
Actually,
because that's what people always, when I show the program, is like, I want to touch it.
So,
I want to.
they're so pretty. Yeah. So actually, another question that I have here is really related to what Claire started to talk about. This question is, what are some tips for creating a calming and engaging environment for activities at home or in a care setting?
Yeah, I just say, I can't emphasize the importance about noise enough, because as I say, it can be so, and we all know how distracting it can be. And I think it's just that ability to concentrate really carefully on something it's not easy. So I think making sure that the temperature's good. It's just like really things that you don't think about because we just do it naturally. Making sure there's good light. I'm 55. I need 60% more light to have the same visual acuity as somebody's younger, and it gets much worse as you get older. So knowing that is really important, and thinking about the materials, thinking about contrast is really important. Dementia can often impact on our ability to perceive things when they're the same colour as a surface. And so finding ways to maybe help to distinguish things in terms of colour and texture and feel. And And again, thinking about just thinking about kind of cognitive load, thinking about the amount of energy it takes to do something. So maybe just breaking things down slightly into smaller chunks so it's not quite as overwhelming. Making sure that there are breaks. And again, so many times when I'm just with amazing people, often I'll be doing something and people will stand up and have a bit of a walk around and then come back. And I think that's really healthy, just be able to kind of move a bit of energy. So, but everyone would learn those tips on your course, Karen, anyway. And as I said, I definitely come on it. I would love to do that.
Nice.
Sorry,
So I'm actually
sorry.
going to invite Linda to share a little bit about creating an environment in a care facility to do an activity, because I know that when you visit your husband, you often do puzzles together in common areas. And I know it can be a challenge to create a space for the two of you sometimes.
Yes, well, the unit that John is on, initially when he moved there 2 months ago, when I wanted to do puzzles with him, I took him to the dining room because it's a lovely bright space with big windows, and it was really, it was so pleasant after the relatively anyway, after the previous space. And so the first day we did our puzzle and it was all fine. And then the second day we were doing a puzzle, and another gentleman from the unit came along and was very interested in what we were doing and observing, and then started picking up pieces of the puzzle. I have these great puzzles that John used to do at home, that worked really well. He used to do them on his own. And so he was picking up pieces of the puzzle and trying to put them together, and they weren't pieces that went together, but anyway. And then he started just stuffing them into his pockets and so forth. And I had to get a PAB to try to recollect them because I wasn't going to start fighting with the collector. And we never did get some of the pieces back. So I learned from that I'd be better off doing the puzzle in his room. And the assistant head nurse found a little table that we could use, and so that's what we've been doing ever since. And I make sure that I'm positioned so that if the collectors come in, because there are a couple of them who are very interested in these puzzles, that they can't get access to the pieces and run away with them, as was the case.
So we're coming to the end of the time. I wanted to give everybody an opportunity to sort of share any closing thoughts that you might have before we say goodbye. So maybe I don't want to put anybody on the spot. So if you don't want to share closing thoughts, that's totally fine. But maybe I'll go around, and if you have anything to share, you're welcome to do so. Maybe Mark, would you like to start?
I've learned a lot today, things I didn't know about, and in the end, I'm feeling very pleased that the AGI is going to be part of my lifestyle, going to be part of what I carry on with, and I can contribute to, I hope, too, as well. So
I'm really happy to hear that, Mark. That's really nice. We're with you.
Good.
All right, Linda?
Hearing about the program in Scotland, I just so wish that there had been something like that available even before John's diagnosis in 2017, because it wasn't early onset. He was in his 70s, but it was several years before that he was showing signs of cognitive impairment. And by the time he was diagnosed, he had lost so much confidence. And to be part of a program that would help to maintain and sustain his sense of self and sense of competence and confidence, I just wish that could have been there for him. That's it.
Who would like to go next? I'll put someone up. Maybe Patricia, would you like to?
Yeah, I just, again, Karen, Maryvic, I just like to, thank you also for the opportunity to bringing us all together here to be sharing. And I think, my closing thoughts is it's always about, through this journey with dementia, we just, there are a lot of things we can do. We're just going to do it differently, as, Claire was sharing some quotes, which is, really touching. And I think it's really creating, this community, this connection. And I think that here we could have a bit of a sense of that, and hope we can keep building these communities and these connections, which I think it's the most important in the journey.
I'm going to leave Claire for the last. If that's okay. Ainsley?
Yes, I think I just want to say thank you to all the attendees and all of the panelists. This to me is so important because I think it's an opportunity to learn together, to learn from one another. And I think that's what we have to all keep doing, to stay curious and to continue to work together. And that's how we're going to make an impact and move forward. So thank you to everybody for being here and letting me be a part of it.
Merrick?
Yes, I just would like to thank again Claire, Patricia, Linda, and Mark for really being here today, because it really creates this beautiful conference that we have a little bit more colorful and relatable, and I know that a lot of our families who are attending today really appreciated your presence. So from the bottom of my heart, personally, I really am happy that I am working with you guys and I'm here with AGI. So for me, this is not just a career. This is kind of like, I feel like it's a vocation, my passion, and just working with everyone really is inspiring, and it's like keeping that fire burning. So thank you very much. So that's my closing speech.
We
Thank
have
you.
a lovely comment here saying Linda and Mark's participation is extremely eye-opening. So thank you both for giving us some of your time and sharing your reality and your experiences and your truth.
Thank you.
With us. We appreciate
More
it.
welcome. Thank you.
And Claire.
I just want to say thank you again. The warmth, the community and the space that you create, I think is exceptional. And I just, I think the warmth and the generosity of spirit amongst everybody, both the panelists and also, yourselves in terms of hosting this, but also the incredible openness of the questions that people have asked. I think it's extraordinary. And as I said at the beginning, it's such a privilege, and it really is. And, this is going to be something that I'm going to really take away with me. And, it will, I will continue to kind of, share and build on this amazing afternoon. Thank you. And thank you to everybody here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This is a wonderful way to spend the morning. So thank you very much, everybody. It's 12:34, so I'm sorry, we're 4 minutes over, but we haven't lost many people, so that's a good sign, right? So thank you very much, everybody. Make sure that if you're not already on our newsletter list, you're getting our newsletter. Hopefully you gave us, if you didn't give us your email address when you registered for the course, send your email address, send a note to info@agiteam.org, because sometime next week, I will send you out a document that gives you the contact, the information from those slides of those access points to getting services here in our community. So I will send that out, like I said, probably the end of next week, I would imagine is realistic. Okay, so thank you very much, everybody, for attending. Thank you for those who participated. It's very much appreciated.